Jazz music can feel like a mystery. I know it certainly did for me. I've always been a theoretical person and musician and trusted more what I see on paper, for instance, more than what I hear. But I've tried to change that during the years, and today I thought I'd share my process when I'm learning new jazz standards, and hopefully this can be beneficial to you as well. So step number 1 is, before you pull out any sort of sheet music or you start listening to recordings, figure out what's already inside of you. It could be a tune that you have heard a lot but never actually played, or it could be a standard tune that you played several years ago and you kind of remember it, maybe, maybe not. And this is, of course, if you're not in a rush. If you have a gig tonight or tomorrow, you go straight to the sheet music, of course, and you have to skip some of these steps. This is more kind of a daily routine to slowly build up a library of tunes and at the same time develop your ear and inner hearing. So as an example, someone mentioned the tune "You'd Be So Nice to Come Home To" the other day. I've never played that tune. I've heard it a long time ago. Could have been a Bob Brookmeyer recording. And I think I know the first phrase. That's about it. So that's a great start. So what I like to do is to either sing it, do, 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 do. Now, I'm not very comfortable singing like this, not especially in front of a camera. I like to whistle, so you can try that, and start figuring out what is happening in the melody. So I can hear we are starting in minor, the 5 going up to the 1. So we are modulating to a major chord there. So now let's play it on the trombone. So either we can just pick a key, or we can start playing in the key that we have in our head already. A cumbersome key. So we started in E minor and then it modulated to C major, I think. So now with our analytical brain, we can transpose this to a key that is more comfortable, maybe B flat minor. Still a bit too low maybe, so we can try C minor. If you don't play the piano or the keyboard, I highly recommend you start to learn just a little bit at least. So if we continue now in C minor, we can try figure out maybe some of the chords. Maybe not. Yeah, and I have no idea if this is correct, but that is not super important. The important thing is I got something out of me into the world. And I can promise you this will boost your curiosity and your confidence. It's much easier to recognize the building patterns of jazz tunes. So step number 2. Start listening to recordings. And nowadays it's easier than ever to just with a simple search get access to hundreds of recordings. And this is also the moment you will discover if you remember the tune correctly. I usually start with singers, then you get the lyrics as well, if the song has lyrics. My go-to artists are Frank Sinatra, Julie London, and Chet Baker, because they usually sing the theme pretty straight, and you will probably have the opportunity to play the tune in 3 different keys, because every singer prefers their own key. And then I go to some instrumentalists, Dexter Gordon, Miles Davis, J.J. Johnson, and you can just see what comes up. So you can search, of course, on Spotify, for instance, or YouTube. So when you have listened a couple of times, try to figure out what the chords are. Then you find some sort of sheet music. You can, for instance, search on Google, "You'd be so nice to come home to chords," for instance. And then you go to the image tab. And there you will have probably around 10 different sheet music images. And some of these you need to take with a grain of salt. If you are old enough to have bought one of these real books, you had to buy these illegally back in the day, it's the same thing there. You'll get an idea of how the tune is put together, but some of the chords might be wrong. If you have access to Jamie Abersol's books, those chords are correct for the most time, in my experience. So now my advice is to learn this tune in 2 different keys. One key that is the most common. If you made this sheet music search in Google, you will see that most of them are in the same key, and that is probably the key that most musicians will play it in. You can also compare the recordings. If there is a Miles Davis recording on your list, that is probably the key most players play it in. And then you choose a key that is most comfortable for you, if you were to perform the tune with a quartet, for instance. So many of the keys for jazz standards are not ideal for a trombone player. If we take It Could Happen to You, for instance. It's pretty low. It works, but I would prefer a key somewhere in between. But we can wait a little bit with deciding on the next key. The first thing I'd like to do when I really want to learn a jazz standard tune is to play the melody over and over and think of the harmony of the song. Which note am I playing right now? What function does it have? So the first note is the 5 note of the E flat major chord. I like to think of this as the C7 flat 9. Maybe easier than thinking G minor flat 5 first. Simplify, always good. Okay, then a C. Then we are on an F minor chord. Ooh, what happens there? Well, that's one of these beautiful backdoor cadences. So D7 flat 9, going back to the 1 chord, the E flat major. So I go through the whole tune this way, very slowly, to figure out where is the melody going, what function does it have. This way it's much easier to transpose the tune later. You don't have to go, block for block. In this particular melody, you can also notice these jumps are perfect fifths every time. Little things like that will really help when you are transposing. Okay, let's figure out key number 2. So we know we are starting on the 5th note of the root major chord of the key. So if we start on the note D, we know we are in G minor. That's a better register, I think. Maybe a bit low still. So if we start on an E instead, we are in A major. Alright, let's try one last one. One half step up. That felt really good. So that was B flat major. I usually prefer to pick a key that is far from the other key in the circle of fifths. So if you don't know what that really is, you can say it should be a big difference in the number of accidentals in the key. So from E flat to B flat, many of the chords will be the same but in different places. So if you pick a key like A major instead, all the chords will be different. But that's up to you. And then you do the same thing with the new key. You play the melody over and over, while at the same time going through the chords and what function the melody notes have. And then you can gradually start to fill in maybe some chord tones or some phrases that you start to hear. Also, start to play along with the recordings. Transcribing solos and so on is super important, of course, but in this case, we're just kind of casually playing along with the recording. Maybe we hear a phrase here and there that we kind of copy or just make a note of, and sometimes the note choices will reveal the chords in another way. This way, you will be able to play with the best bands in jazz history. There are a lot of exercises you can do over jazz standards, and if I ever make a video about that, I will put a link here. You can click on that one. But I think this method is such a good way of getting away from memorizing chords that you have seen on a paper or digital nowadays, and instead rely on what you hear and what you remember. To me, this has been awesome, and if you try it out, please let me know in the comments and tell me what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Alright, let's try one last one. Alright, let's try one last one.